All righty, what's going on? How are we, everybody? It is Friday, September 23rd, just across the just about 5:30 on the East Coast. This is the Slate. We are a DraftKings show. We take you up until just about 6 o'clock as we get you set for the weekend and really most importantly Sunday for week 3 in the National Football League. Some news has dropped in the last hour or so as it relates to injuries. Those final injury reports come out. So the big one, I think the one that jumps out the most, we'll start with Matt LaMarca, Brendan Glasheen. If you haven't been able to tell already by what it says on the screen, LaMarca, the big one, and the line reflects it, is Jaguars Chargers. Justin Herbert did not throw reportedly at today's practice, which was open to the media. The media portion of practice today for the Chargers, but he is listed officially as questionable. So is his running mate Keenan Allen, who did not play last Thursday night. This is a Chargers team coming off 10 days of rest for Sunday because they played last Thursday night against Kansas City. But this line reflects no Herbert because the line was 7. It's now dropped to 3 points. Chargers are still a favorite at home they're at home against the Jaguars. It's pretty remarkable stuff, but makes a lot of sense when you have one of the best quarterbacks in the league potentially out for this game.
I think if anything, it undersells the value that Herbert has, right? When I talked about this game on Tuesday, I thought the Chargers -7 was a pretty good value, assuming that Herbert was going to play. I think that with their upgraded defense, they've looked the part this year. Jacksonville's been frisky to start the year, but I had this spread closer to 9 or 10 points in my projections. So when you think about it, with the spread dropping from just 7 to 3, that's saying that Herbert's only worth 4 points to the spread. I don't agree with that assessment. I think Herbert's worth more to the spread, but I also think that 7 line was kind of a hedge by the sports books, right? They were kind of not entirely sure whether or not Herbert was going to play or not, so they hung it there. I think that if the Jaguars do get to face a Herbertless Chargers team, the people who got it at 7, congratulations. There were plenty of people who were taking the plunge with Jaguars +7 early in the week, anticipating this scenario, but I think a lot of the value is gone at this point. I would not be looking to take the Jaguars +3 if Herbert is unavailable.
You're saying you would not take the Jags if indeed Herbert's out?
I would not. I think that I think that we've lost most of the value in that situation. Again, I think Herbert's probably worth about 6 points of spread value. Most of the top quarterbacks are worth somewhere around 6 to 7 points. Mm-hmm. I had this spread closer to 10 in my personal projections. So now that it's down to 3, I think that most of the value is gone from that injury equation.
Fair enough. I would tend to agree with you as it pertains to that. Some trends as it pertains to this game. Trevor Lawrence has not been good on the road against the number in his career, 0-9. That does not reflect the opponent, of course, with Herbert out, but that is just the career of Trevor Lawrence to this stage. And teams that play on 10 days of rest off a divisional loss, they are not good in these spots either. So yes, Jacksonville, while they have been, I think that's a good word for them, frisky, we still need to see more. Their defense, to me, while you hold Kansas City to 27, I think you take that any day of the week. J.C. Jackson will get his second look. Chargers with the defensive coach and Staley, they have a great front 7 with the addition of Mack in the offseason as well. It's just it almost feels like the rest of the games this week, a lot of really fair spreads for this week. Nothing really jumps off the page. It's really a tough week. And I think if you're in a survivor pool, maybe it's and I know you picked the Jets last week to cover. That was one of your dog picks, but now it's like Cincinnati, which opened 4.5. Cincinnati's -6. Kitchen sink week for the team that went to the Super Bowl last year. That to me might be the only game where I look at it and go, Bengals are going to get this figured out. But then I say, it's the Bengals, man. What do I know? I know they were in the Super Bowl last year, but that is not no sure thing. But it is a really tough board this week, I think.
I will say this about the Bengals, because I think this is a great bounce back spot for them.
Yeah.
The one thing that has really been their Achilles heel for the past few years is their pass rush. And they've started their season with, their pass protection. They've started the season with two matchups against the Cowboys and against the Steelers, both of which get after the quarterback extremely well. You know, you've got guys like TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, very, very good players. Burrow's been sacked at least 6 times in both of those games. That shouldn't be nearly as big of an issue against the Jets. They have just 3 sacks through the first 2 weeks, and their secondary has been pretty well picked apart. So I think if you give Joe Burrow a little bit more time in this spot, he's going to be able to lean on Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And I think that this is the perfect spot for them to really bounce back with a big performance. So I like the Bengals, even laying 6 on the road. Like you said, I was on the Jets last week. They got a bit of a miraculous cover, converting an onside kick after the Browns technically could have just stayed in bounds and ended the game. It was a miracle win. So I'm not putting a ton of stock in that. I think that this is the week for Cincinnati to sort of reassert their dominance.
I would tend to agree. And for those that have, the first thing we think about with Cincinnati is their offensive line has been brutal. Burrow running for his life, but they did make some changes in the offseason to upgrade. They just have yet to put it together. So I'd like to believe this is not a finished product. It's too early in the year to count that unit out. And like I said, it's kitchen sink week. You've got to find a way to put it together, because 0-3 is exactly where you cannot be if you want to be in contention. Elsewhere, you nodded your head when I was talking about injuries being a thing. More than usual, I think, than any other week so far this season. What other injury news, whether it's clear or unclear, questionable, definitely ruled out, like a Sammy Watkins is out for Green Bay. Mm-hmm. What other game do you say, those injuries, I kind of like that number, or maybe I'm staying away from that because of so-and-so being hurt?
Well, I think that the Bills, this is going to be a very interesting week for them. They have been so good, right? I mean, everybody knows how good the Bills have been, but this week they've already ruled out Ed Oliver. They've already ruled out Micah Hyde. They've already ruled out Jordan Phillips. They've already ruled out Dane Jackson. So that's 4 pieces of their defense right there. They also have some additional guys listed as questionable, but they're going to be tested this week by the Dolphins. The Dolphins offense, particularly last week, looked excellent, scoring a ton of points. Granted, they kind of put themselves in a hole to start, but the way I think about this game is the over seems extremely appealing with a banged up Bills defense. We know that the Bills can put up points, and Miami has shown the ability to get back into games. So I think that getting over 53 is extremely reasonable given the Bills injury report.
Something I've been giving some thought. Unders have been phenomenal so far this NFL season. If you had the under last night, apologies. What a freaking finish to that game. Ooh, brutal stuff. You had a Pittsburgh teaser, you're in trouble. Some other stuff like Claypool. If you had a Claypool over prop, that burned. Najee Harris had a fumble at the end of the game. He was the one who technically fumbled at the end for Cleveland to score that touchdown. Just some absolutely insane stuff at the end of that game last night. It's like, the NFL. This is why we hate it sometimes when it comes to putting some skin in the game. But something that's come to mind, the under's hitting at a high rate, and I can't help but think, LaMarca, the thought and the possibility as to why that's been the case is the lack of preseason reps by formidable offenses, especially starting players on really both sides of the ball, but on offense, quarterbacks, starting running backs, receivers 1, 2, and 3, your tight end. Most of the teams that are in it or in contention that we consider high-powered offenses, they did not get first team reps in the offseason, in the preseason. So maybe this is the time, because overs did clear the number just over 500. I see here 19 games over 500 last year for offensive coaches against the spread in the NFL. They had a good year hitting the over against the number. But so far not the case. 4 games under 500 at 17 and 21 against the number in the early part of the year. It's a long way of me saying I think it's caught up. Like the extension of a preseason is really taking place. So maybe this is the week we do see some really high scoring games, some shootouts. Another game that jumps out to me, Darius Leonard was ruled out today for the Colts. So is this the week where Indy 0-2, big spot, you're at home, Pittman's back, you're taking on the Chiefs? That number jumps out to me at 50.5, but there are some low numbers on this board too.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with the lack of practice. I think if anything, that might impact defenders more, right? Because that's typically what you hear, is that since teams aren't allowed to tackle as much in practice these days, they don't tackle as well in games. I think that there's a few things that have contributed. I mean, a lot more teams now are playing that sort of 2-shell safety look, trying to eliminate the big plays, which has kept scoring down. I think it's just, we kind of always see this, it goes in swings, right?
Yep.
The offense has had the edge for so many years, but I think that it might be starting to just swing back a touch towards the defense with some of these like prevent type concepts they're going with. So it's going to take more than 2 weeks to make any definitive statements about, offense, defense, does the over have the edge type of thing. But, I think that again, it's kind of, you want to go on a game by game basis. The Colts game is very interesting to me because this line opened up at 2.5, months ago when the initial lines came out.
Yeah,
it got as high as 6.5. And now it has sort of come back down in Indy's favor. The Sharps seem to really like the Colts this week. They've been one of the most heavily bet professional sides, but the injury to Shaq Leonard, I think, is a big deal. So I'm scared of that game. I really, after last week, I don't know if I want anything to do with the Colts anymore. I get it from a pure numbers standpoint. It does make sense. You're getting a lot of line value, especially with Michael Pittman back in the lineup. But I'm scared of the Colts at this point.
I can't disagree. It might be the worst division in the NFL, the AFC South, at this point in the year. I've heard some banter that maybe it's the AFC North, and I realized with the 2 quarterbacks who played last night, Jacoby Brissett didn't look bad. He's looked pretty good through 3 weeks.
He's been passable in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's more. At least Cleveland. Say what you want about their history as a franchise, and just it always seems they get in their own way. But it feels like since Stefanski and the way they've built the roster, they still have an identity. We're going to run the ball, and whoever steps in at quarterback. Now they tried to take a step forward with Watson to take them to the KC.
He's still coming, by the way. Like if they can tread water without him,
right?
They're going to get a big boost when Deshaun Watson's able to play because. Granted, he hasn't played football in a year and a half at this point, but you could argue he was the best quarterback in the league the last full season that he played, despite getting very little help from the Texans. So, the Browns, if not for that epic collapse last week, they'd be 3-0. Granted, they've played a pretty soft schedule, but I'm not writing them off. And then certainly the Ravens and Bengals, I'm not writing them off either. So I don't think there's any comparison between the AFC North and the AFC South.
That running game of Cleveland is legit. That is very legit. I think Chubb might be the best runner in the league. Just pure.
He's the best. I agree. I always say it. He doesn't get enough credit. I think he's the best running back in football. He's averaged at least 5 yards a carry every year he's been in the NFL.
And I know like Derrick Henry looks like he looks like, in the Fox NFL commercials, he looks like the Transformer, the way he runs. Yeah. Henry just looks cooler doing it because he's just a freak. But Chubb to me is like, this dude like earns every yard, just the way he goes about his approach, I think is really impressive. So I would agree. But Cleveland, I think, has it figured out. But now they're like, okay, can we take the next step if we elevate a quarterback? They can't do that right now. I think Brissett's fine, but he's managing it, and he's doing a pretty good job with it 3 weeks in. Man, so many jumping off points for this slate. What else was I going to ask you? So yeah, I mentioned Sammy Watkins is out for Green Bay. I know, no big deal, but there's just a lot of injuries there in that Bucks Packers game. Can't really figure that one out, but I see a total of 42. That's really low. Sunday night, to me, I don't know what side it's going to go. I mean, I realize it completely flipped. San Fran was getting 2.5 on Sunday night. Now they're a 1.5 point favorite. I am fascinated with that game in terms of just the storylines. And even though the Broncos are 1-1, it doesn't feel like a good 1-1. It feels like an awful 1-1. Like we have more questions than answers. And with Jimmy Garoppolo now being the guy, does it take San Fran to another level? What else you got? I'm like asking you what else you have, but I'm thinking out loud as to what you might say next.
It really is fascinating that that spread, right? And I mean, the Broncos are another team with some key injuries, notably Jerry Jeudy at receiver is questionable, and Russell Wilson. This is a guy that I have defended for years as being, underutilized in Seattle and them not appreciating what they have, and really could not have been worse of a start to the season for Wilson. So maybe it's just a chemistry thing. Maybe he needs some time to gel with his new receivers. I think, you talked about the lack of practice time. I think that's particularly important for teams that have experienced, massive changes, like bringing in a completely different quarterback, new coach. So
just to drive home your point, what's been glaring, the red zone, like the lack of red zone execution by Denver.
Right. And I do think that was a big deal in the Seattle game, right? They outgained Seattle by 180 yards in that contest. They had 2 fumbles at the goal line. So I don't think that things have necessarily been as bad in Denver as their results on the field suggest. But at the same time, I do think that the 49ers get an upgrade with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. We talked about this on the Tuesday show, but Garoppolo may give the team a lower overall ceiling.
Yep.
But I think he drastically increases the week-to-week floor. The guy is kind of the new Alex Smith, where all he does is win football games and all people want to do is take his job away from him. I think that he's going to continue to win games. So this, to me, the number's weird. I think just from a value standpoint, I would take the Broncos because we're getting roughly 3.5-4 points of value compared to the opening number. But at the same time, like it's not a situation that I'm actively seeking out, at least at the moment.
And the newsworthy item in terms of injuries for the Niners, a good sign is George Kittle is going to be good to go. Like he's going to be, he has no injury designation. He does not carry an injury designation into week 3. That's a big sign for them. He was out week 1, limited role in week 2. So that's a great sign for San Fran. They continue to do the musical chairs at running back, which I'm not worried about. Shanahan's proven they can get to the NFC title game and figure it out. They're like disposable razors, that running back position. You just, you move on to the next one and we'll figure it out. And by the way, I just pulled this up. San Fran's odds to win the NFC West, slightly lower than what they were to begin the year. They were at plus 150 right before the season started. So they're at plus 130 now this week. So, I know what I was going to bring up because we have a question in the chat from our guy, Sean Preston, back in the Madden days. But Mr. Preston, I always think of, would you like me to, what does Mr. Deed say? What is Mr. He goes, Preston, like, would you like me to water the plants? Preston, I don't know why I think
know what you're talking about. It's very familiar sounding. I can't exactly place the quote. So.
Yeah. It's not the guy who says, I will do your sock
It's not the change your socks guy.
No, it's what the heck's his name? Who has the $40 billion? It's
Adam Sandler?
No, it's the family. It's the relative's name. Preston Blake. Blake yes, Media. Okay. There it is. Anyway, my mind wanders when I read people's names. I don't know what people think of mine. But anyway, we like the Lions this week. Lions were sharp early against the Washington Commanders. As as favorites. The Lions a favorite in a game for the first time in forever, which congrats, Lions. You held on and you didn't make it easy there at the end, but they're getting 6 at Minnesota. But remember, it is 1:00 Kirk Cousins, not 8 p.m. Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit conflicted here. I think that Minnesota is probably being a little bit undervalued after losing to Philadelphia in pretty embarrassing fashion on Monday night. But at the same time, I hate betting favorites against Detroit because they just do not quit. You can get the team down by 21 like the Eagles did in week 1, and they just will storm back if you don't keep your foot on the gas. Big credit to Dan Campbell. That's the mentality and culture that he's building in Detroit. We saw it all off season on Hard Knocks, but I really do think that they have embraced that philosophy. So I think the Vikings are the correct side, but would it shock me if Detroit engineered another backdoor comeback? It would not.
Okay. Yep. That's what they did week 1 against Philly. Backdoor cover there, down, I think it was 14, and they ended up scoring 11 points to lose 38, or maybe it was 40-35.
38-35, I believe.
38-35 is the final. Right. But the spread was 4.5. So
yes.
that got there. Right. Okay. I had some friends, I think, that had the Eagles in a teaser, which is why I came up with the number 5. Whatever. You're right. They got there. And last week they won outright as a favorite. This week getting 6, slight juice on +6 at -115. Yeah, it's a division game, and we'll see what kind of, if they can put their offense together, I think against probably the best.
Justin
maybe
Jefferson
not.
Game incoming.
Say it again.
Big Justin Jefferson game incoming.
Yeah, I was just going to say probably facing the toughest defense to this stage, but I mean, the way the Philadelphia Eagles have looked defensively, they let up at the end, but that's what you're getting at. You might get an elite defensive effort from the Vikings through 3 quarters, but if to cover a number of 6, you don't, that's okay, because the Lions could just put up a fight at the end and make it look closer than it really was.
Absolutely. That's the Dan Campbell special, the moral victory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I still can't get over at the end of Hard Knocks when the woman, or I forget if it was a man or a woman, but someone asked him at the end of the last episode, the 2022 Detroit Lions will be, and then he pauses, and I think someone put this on Twitter. Dan Campbell is going through every game individually to be like, okay, win.
That's a loss, dog.
And yeah, the way he paused so long, I'm like, is he like doing the win total game in his head? So he's careful about what he says for expectations. But he said something like, there's hope, and we'll give people some hope that we'll have a good season. So yeah, the Bills, those injuries too, it's a big test for Miami. Good test for the Dolphins if they can hang in the game. I think even if Miami loses, if they put up a fight and score and keep up, that'll be a good look. But then maybe the Bills, it's like, yeah, they brought this up on the Thursday night broadcast last night. I didn't even think of it this way. I think it was Ryan Fitzpatrick, which, by the way, that post-game show I thought was phenomenal. Fitzpatrick, Sherman.
I like their group, yeah.
Who's the offensive lineman from the Rams who just retired? Whitworth. He's on there. And then is it Tony Gonzalez, I think, is on it? Pretty good crew. They had Ocho Cinco stop by for Madden rating stuff. It was a good product. I think Sherman's pretty sharp. He's doing media stuff now. But Ryan Fitzpatrick made this great point. Buffalo is going to be baking in the sun for 3 quarters. That Miami Heat is no joke. It is no joke.
That's it's always been something that I like to factor in. The white uniforms in Miami when you're getting the heat going, big edge for the Dolphins versus their road teams.
What else you like? Your article does come out today?
Yes, it's I don't know if it's been posted yet. I submitted it.
Admittedly, I did not read it today, so I'm being fair. Typically, I will admit if I read it or don't read it, I did not read it. So there you go. I am being honest. I'm not going to fake it and act like I read it.
Yeah, you wouldn't have had much opportunity to anyway, so you're forgiven.
Thank you.
Let's talk Packers Bucks. I do
Okay.
think that, that's kind of the marquee game. But it's maybe the most ugly marquee game, in a while. Like, each side has a no doubt Hall of Fame first ballot quarterback, but everything else you just kind of question on the offensive side of the ball. The Packers, they had a great matchup last week against the Bears. They were kind of able to just control the game with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. That's not going to be an option against Tampa Bay. They're going to have to throw the ball to win. And who the heck is going to catch passes for them? With Sammy Watkins out, Randall Cobb, Christian Watson questionable, like Alan Lazard is their top guy. Do we really feel very good about that? It's a tough situation. But then on the other side, Tampa Bay has just been eviscerated. Their offensive line, they're down like 3 or 4 guys already.
Mm-hmm.
No Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin. Every other receiver, it seems like, on the roster is questionable. Leonard Fournette is questionable. So the Packers, they're not as good defensively as the Bucks, but man, Tampa Bay is going to have their hands full just trying to move the ball. They're going to need Fournette to be active and have a huge game, I think. I'm leaning towards the under, even with 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks in a game that has a 42-point total. I think given what we've seen from these teams to start the year, it's fair to question if either of them can move the ball.
There's been proof of Tom Brady in a Super Bowl run in New England, the 2018-19 Patriots, where they kind of found their identity running the ball, play great defense. That's what this Bucks team feels like. Like, we're going to just win 20-13, 24-20 if it's against a legit opponent. Giving their defense a lot of credit. Their defense has been dialed in, but the injuries, no question. And then, look, I'm sorry. It's Aaron Rodgers, to me, has done a really good job in his past to elevate others. He just doesn't give himself enough credit for it. I think I'm giving Aaron a compliment there, but the not having Devontae Adams is clearly is different. I mean, it was different. He always went off against the Vikings in those head-to-head meetings. Didn't have him week 1. And they've got a ground game too, though. Like, their ground game's legit with Dillon and Jones. And it was the Bears, but
amazing running backs.
Yeah.
Best 1-2 duo. Well, maybe the Cleveland guys are better, but
yep.
I love the Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon combo. I think both are lead backs in the NFL.
Yeah.
The one thing about Rodgers, I agree. I made that point many times this offseason. He's always been able to take that next guy and move him up, whether it be he did it with Devontae Adams, he did it with Jordy Nelson.
Lazard.
Well, we'll see, right? We'll see.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. Right. I see what you're saying. He's done it for a game. Remember, Lazard had a breakout game on Monday night a couple years ago. But your point is not a game. Not a game, but can you do it for a season? Like, can you be a dude for a long stretch?
And I still think their best chance of having that next guy is Christian Watson. 2nd round rookie pick, phenomenal athlete. He's already kind of racked up air yards for the Packers to start his career, but just hasn't clicked yet. I still think that if this offense is going to break out, they're going to need either him or maybe Romeo Dobbs. They're going to need somebody other than Alan Lazard, because I don't think Alan Lazard is a true number 1.
So before we go, we have just a couple minutes to go. How about we just kind of make it a clean finish?
Okay.
Your best bets for Sunday. I know we're both. I'm with you. I got the Bengals early at -4.5. I feel good about that now that it's at 6. I think we're both in agreement there on that game. Take the Bengals. What else are your favorites before we wrap it?
Texans +3. Basically anytime 2 bad teams play, I'm gonna grab the underdog. But I think the Bears are like just not built for 2022. They're running the ball on 65% of their offensive plays. That's just not a way to win in the current game. Falcons. This line has moved in the Falcons' favor, but they're still +1 against the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are a fraud. That week 1 result against the Broncos is kind of throwing people off the scent of how bad they are. But the Falcons offense is pretty good, right? I mean, Mariota has held his own. Drake London looks the part of a number one wide receiver. They really haven't even gotten anything yet from Kyle Pitts.
That's what concerns me. There's the coaching, but go on.
I think the Falcons offense is at least average, right? And that might be the only average unit in that ball game. So I'll take the points with Atlanta as well.
Love it. Going back to some underdogs this week. You hit, look, I'll be honest. I heard you out. Dallas, I was like, I kind of agree. Like Cooper Rush, not that terrible. You were on the show for that. So I love the Dallas pick. And then I did not go with the Jets. I did not have the confidence to do that.
We got lucky there.
Yeah. And then the other one was I was Houston at Denver. Just felt like a lot. So, I mean, I think it's a tough board. It is a tough board this week.
Board.
And I think there's another game quickly that you like too. You got 2 seconds. You like the Monday night game, right? Giants, Dallas.
No.
That
one is big for me. The injury report's going to play a huge part there. If Micah Parsons is out, I will be on the Giants. Okay. If Micah Parsons is in, I will probably be on the Cowboys.
Okay. And Michael Gallup practiced in full today. So do it that what you will in terms of the offense trying to piece it together in the absence of Dak Prescott. We have to go because it's just about 6:00. I think we've got Madden, some Rainmaker stuff coming up tonight. So with that being said, thanks to Eamon and T Pike behind the scenes, from Matt Lamarca, Brendan Glasheen. Everyone have a great weekend. Be safe. Have a good time. Be good to each other. Enjoy the football Sunday. And then we're back. The Sweat is Sunday, bright and early. Check it. YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And then we'll be back with the Slate on Monday. See you then.